I've got to come in hot on General Hospital today. This entire video is going to be negative. So if you don't feel like listening to it, I don't really give a damn, honestly. I know I've talked about some GH videos in the past, and there's been some people saying, "Oh, you don't really like the show." Frankly, I don't. Why would I? And I'm gonna get into the reason why, and I'm gonna tell everybody why Frank Valentini needs to start being held responsible for the terrible decisions this show has started to make. And then I have to call out the soap press for their constant ass kissing instead of just actually calling these shows out over the past 2 decades like they needed to do. Okay? Originally, I started to mark down my rankings before I watched the last 2 episodes of General Hospital with the cabin and shit. So I originally had General Hospital a little bit higher, and I had already recorded the alleged 8th and 9th place. But those two shows are going up one spot because General Hospital deserves to be in 9th place. Frankly, maybe it deserves to be in last place. So you're going to see in the upcoming videos me talking about the bottom 3 soap operas, and General Hospital is not going to be included in that. That's because I changed at the last minutes after watching the horrid cabin scenes that were so hyped up, and this is the bullshit they're spewing to us. I've talked about how I like the younger set and that they had all this potential. And I've talked about how General Hospital continues to have all this potential and squanders it. While they've done more than squander it with this cabin story. They hyped it up for 5 or 6 months, and it sucks. And it's horrible what they did. I don't even know if I'm going to have time to talk about the other crap that they're trying to spew for us. Like Luke's death out of nowhere, even though they just had Jason die, and we're supposed to care about all of these deaths that are happening off screen. That's horrible enough, but nothing is more horrible than the way this show is treating their black teen character of Trina. This month of January has shown me that General Hospital has a black problem. They do. Their PR and social media is fucking tone deaf, if not just stupid. I'm not sure. And all of these decision makings come through Frank Valentini. This is his show. This is his baby. He deserves to have all of the criticism that is going to come out of this cabin story. Basically, they had Esme drug Trina on this cabin trip just to get her out of the way. She basically became just a prop for this story between the two white couples when all the hype is around Trina and Spencer. There is no hype around Cam and Joss. But anyway, this story alone made Cam and Joss look like shitty friends, so who's supposed to root for them after this? Trina's drugged. Nobody goes and checks on her after this. They just think she's drunk, I guess. Everybody in the story looks bad right now. So they've already, when I started watching the show over the summer again, I saw the potential in these teens, only for them to squander in 6 months. All of the white teen characters look terrible right now. And the story was already awkward. They have the white teens and then this one black teen. They seem to refuse to have another black teen on the show right now. I don't understand why. Maybe instead of getting the boring Curtis's father, they could have had a black male teen come on for Trina, since apparently all these soap operas still in 2022 could only have a certain amount of black characters, because that's what it feels like. So if that was bad enough, just making her the fifth wheel in general, she's on this trip with a bunch of white people, and this situation, the first thing that came to mind for me was the Tamla Horsford case. And if you all don't know about the Tamla Horsford case, I think you should Google it. She was a black woman on an adult sleepover with a bunch of white people, and she ended up dead at the party, and there's a lack of investigation, even though that's a bit suspicious, don't you think? But it's in the heart of like a rural southern state, so it just seems to be buried. So that was the first thing that came to mind with this story, but they're just pushing it to be Cam and Joss have sex and are being recorded, and maybe fucking Esme is going to try and lay the blame on Trina, but that's just going to make every white teen in this story look worse because this show is tone deaf and Frank Valentini just loves his pets and they all always happen to be white. This was the same situation on One Life to Live, where he was always propping up the white couples, even though there was a popular interracial couples with Evangeline. And yet everything was always to prop up the white people. While it isn't the mid-2000s anymore, fucking Valentini, or the late 2000s, or whenever the hell you were on One Life to Live to bring it to its death, it's 2022, and you're going to start being called out for this shit. And if not by the soap press, I'm going to call out the soap press every single time they don't call your ass out. How the writers and the producers thought this was a good idea, I don't know. The writers, by the way, are Don O'Connor and Chris Van Etten. They need to be called out too. They did make this decision in the storyline. It's 2022, and Trina does not need to be the black friend, the prop for the white stories. I give Carlivati a lot of shit these days because of what he did to the character of Lani, a black woman on that show a few years ago, and he had Lani on her knees, and it was gross. And since then, I have no problem calling Carlivati out for his bullshit writing, his terrible writing. He ran out of ideas a fucking decade ago. He's still pulling out masks. But see, the soap press for all of these years now has propped up Carlivati and Valentini as being these great for soap operas. They're so great for soap operas, and they've kissed their asses for over a decade now. And it's gotten these soap operas nowhere. I've been calling this out on the videos for the bottom soaps for January. You're probably going to see me talk about this again because I'm trying to drive home the fact that if the press in the US, maybe this isn't the same for British soap operas, but in the US, the soap press just always kisses the asses of these shows more times than not, instead of actually calling them out when they need to be called out. And that I guess the reason is because they want interviews or they want spoilers from these soap operas. They want spoilers from these terrible stories. Really? You want to kiss the asses of these producers for what? For these shows to just slowly have the deaths that they've been having? I genuinely feel like this is the last shot for soap operas in America to have a bit of a resurgence. But instead, they continue to fall back on thinking it's the 70s, I guess, because that's what it feels like. It feels like they don't want to put Spencer and Trina together because they're an interracial couple. I don't understand how that could be possible because they have all of the support online. But the General Hospital and Frank Valentini is acting like it's the fucking late 70s on Days of Our Lives when Days of Our Lives was doing an interracial couple and getting hate for it. But it's the opposite right now. There isn't hate for that. There's a major support for it. And Valentini is deciding to try and make Trina a prop for the white stories. Well, it isn't going to fly anymore, Valentini. You did it for over a decade on One Life to Live in General Hospital, but it doesn't fly anymore. And you're going to get called out on it. And if the soap press doesn't start calling you out on it, I'm going to call out the soap press. So I'm calling out fucking Daytime Confidential. I'd call out Soap Opera Digest, but calling out Soap Opera Digest in 2022 is pointless because who gives a shit about Soap Opera Digest? But I feel like Michael Fairman maybe needs to be called out. I mean, I get that he's attached to Days, but maybe if the soap press had some balls, they would call out these shows more instead of just champion everything they do, even when it's terrible decisions, or in this case, horrible decisions. I even feel like Source Ryan on Twitter needs to be called out because when this is what happened on Twitter like a week ago, they were like, this is the women of Port Charles, and it was all the white women. And Source Ryan was in there like making excuses for the show, like these are all the actresses that were on set all day, even though there was a black actress on set that day. Why do you have to kiss these shows' asses? You really want the spoilers this bad? Instead of just having some sort of journalist integrity, or are you just not real journalists? That's probably the case. But the soap press is really what started terrible journalism these days. The soap press has enabled these soap operas to become what they have become, and that is trash. They're all trash, and they continue to make bad decisions in the US. So I'm going to be holding Frank Valentini accountable all year long if these kind of decisions continue to make. And to top it all off, they were getting all of this pushback on the story on Friday, only for on Saturday they post a picture. The bad PR continues. They post a picture of Josh and Carly, so they're pushing Josh as the main teen character, even though nobody gives two shits about her, to be frank. Apparently, every single story on this show just has to lead to Carly screaming. I guess every story is just for Carly to scream. And especially after this story, Josh and Cam are going to look terrible. And knowing Valentini is probably going to lead to pregnancy, and nobody wants to see that story happen. So yeah, the show failed hard with this story on several levels. They hyped it up. They used the momentum of Spencer and Trina to hype up Cam and Josh, and it failed miserably. It had the opposite effect. Frank Valentini is giving me fucking Vince McMahon vibes, except Vince McMahon actually knows how to make money. Frank Valentini knows nothing about that. He can't raise ratings to save his life. But the WWE is always doing the opposite of what the fans want. And then they wonder why they've lost so many of their fans over the years and their ratings are in the toilet, just like General Hospitals. Frank Valentini does the same. He pushes his pets like Peter that everybody wants off of this show, but he continues to keep Peter around. It feels like out of spite. It feels like Frank has a spite for his own fan base. Reasons for I don't understand. Well, I've had enough of Frank, and I'm going to continue to call out Frank because he has a pattern. Like I talked about, this is the same shit that happened on One Life to Live with Evangeline, who was a very popular character, but always somehow ended up second fiddle to the white characters. And just saying, Renee Goldsberry and Tika Sumpter, who were the black characters on One Life to Live, are doing great in their careers now. Where's Brie Williamson? Where's Melissa Archer? I hate to call them out, but they're a whole lot of nowhere. But the black actresses on that show made a career out of acting. And it just goes to show how Frank dropped the ball for those characters on his old show and how he's dropping the ball, what seems purposefully, for their only black teen character right now. Something's got to happen because I'm not going to stop calling out General Hospital. I'm not going to stop calling out Frank Valentini. And I'm not going to stop calling out the soap press if they don't have pushback on the shit show that General Hospital has become. The PR on Twitter is awful. They're tone deaf. The writing is tone deaf. So clearly the producer is tone deaf and I guess stuck in the 70s. What are you doing, Valentini? From one Italian to another, or to others, Frank Valentini and Ron Calavati suck at their jobs right now. They are not helping soap operas anymore. You've kissed their asses for over a decade, and it's gotten the soaps nowhere. It just has the soaps on life support, just doing miserable same stories that they've been doing for 2 decades because the soap press won't call them out. While Trina deserves better, and the spotlight is on the show now, and if I have my way, I'm covering Big Brother again. And when I cover Big Brother, the views on my channel go up. So I'm hoping there's some eyes on these General Hospital videos to start my own pushback if the soap press isn't going to. General Hospital sucks right now. They squander every single potential they have, and it comes from their producer, Frank Valentini, who is showing a pattern of making his black characters props for his white pets that aren't popular with fans anyway. And after the story, they're even in danger of making Spencer unpopular. So I don't know what they're trying to get from this cabin story. It has miserably failed on every single level. Having the only black teen drugged on this cabin trip was so tone deaf and just so awful. And it's not even going to be the main point of the story because, Joss and Cam are going to be recording fucking. Even though that was their own decision to make on this fucking cabin trip. So all the characters are going to come out looking bad out of this story in one way or another. But the only character I care about right now is Trina. And if the writing doesn't improve, if Trina doesn't start getting her own story or getting another teen that she can relate to at least. But in that same case, if they bring on a black teen for Trina and drop Spencer and Trina, then I have to call out the show too because it's not the 70s anymore. Interracial couples are fine. Get over yourselves, Disney. Get over yourselves, Frank Valentini. Write what the fans want to see. Most couples in daytime can never have the support that Trina and Spencer have right now, especially now when these shows are fucking dead in the water. And yet they refuse to write for them, but push your white pets. Valentini, this is the first video of many that will be coming your way for the shit that you are trying to pull with the one black character that's popular on your show. It ain't the 70s anymore. It's not even the mid-2000s anymore. Get it together.